It began with whispers. A tribe, the Banu Nadir, accused of plotting against Muhammad. But these were not proven crimes, only suspicions. Rumors that quickly turned into a death sentence. In Medina, a community that once called the palm groves home suddenly found itself branded as traitors, their very existence painted as a threat. The Muslims surrounded the fortress-like homes of the Banu Nadir. What followed was not a battle of equals, but a slow suffocation. Supplies cut off, fear spreading like wildfire, families trapped inside their own walls, not knowing if tomorrow would bring survival or slaughter. And then came the fire. Palm trees, their source of food and livelihood, set ablaze. Houses, once filled with laughter, burned before their eyes. It was not just a military tactic. It was humiliation, terror, and destruction. For the Banu Nadir, the message was clear: leave or be erased. With their homes burning and their future crumbling, the Banu Nadir faced an impossible choice: resist and be slaughtered, or surrender and be driven into exile. No trial, no defense, only one verdict handed down: leave everything behind or face annihilation. They were forced to abandon their wealth, their weapons, even the tools they used to survive. Carts carried only what little could fit. Children clinging to mothers, elders too weak to walk, hearts heavy with disbelief. Generations of life in Medina reduced to ashes in a matter of days. Imagine the scene: hundreds of men, women, and children walking out of their own city under guard. No songs of farewell, no dignity in departure, just silence, broken by sobs, as they watched the smoke rise behind them, smoke from the homes they would never see again. The roads out of Medina were lined with dust and despair. The Banu Nadir had no destination, only survival. Children stumbled as their mothers carried what little they could salvage. The men walked in silence, stripped not just of weapons, but of the very ground beneath their feet. For centuries, they had lived in Medina, woven into its markets, its fields, its very soul. Now, in an instant, they were foreigners, outcasts in a world that no longer welcomed them. Exile is not just losing land, it is losing history, memory, and the roots that bind a people together. Among them were poets, storytellers, and scholars, voices that once filled Medina with debate, wit, and song. But exile crushed those voices, their words carried away in the desert wind, silenced not by reason or dialogue, but by fire and the sword. In Medina, the victors celebrated. They spoke of triumph, of God's favor, of enemies driven out. But beneath the songs of victory lingered the truth. A community had been destroyed, its homes reduced to ash, its people scattered to the winds. What was called conquest was, in reality, a wound carved deep into the human soul. The Banu Nadir wandered, searching for refuge. Some fled to Khaybar, others to the lands of Syria. Each step was heavy with betrayal, each night colder than the last. Exile did not end with leaving Medina. It lived on in the hunger of their children, the grief of their elders, and the silence of their poets. The burning of their homes was more than an act of war. It was an act of erasure. It was meant to send a message: resist, and you will vanish, but memory cannot be burned so easily. In the ashes, a story remained, one of injustice, one of voices silenced by force, one of a people who deserved more than exile and fire. Those who escaped carried their grief like a shadow. They rarely spoke of what was taken from them: the orchards, the books, the songs. Silence became their shield, because to remember was to reopen the wound. But silence is also a prison, locking away stories that cry to be heard. Centuries later, many would retell this moment as strategy, as divine justice, as nothing more than politics. The victors wrote their glory, while the victims' cries faded into footnotes. Yet behind the mask of history, the truth still breathes. This was not glory. This was cruelty, written in fire and exile. The expulsion of the Banu Nadir was more than a clash of tribes. It was a human tragedy, a community erased under the guise of faith. It reminds us of an uncomfortable truth. When religion is wielded as a weapon, the cost is always human lives, human homes, human futures, and those voices, silenced by force, deserve to be remembered. The expulsion of the Banu Nadir was not just a story from the past. It was the tearing apart of lives, the burning of homes, the silencing of voices. Families scattered across the desert, clutching only what little they could carry, watching their orchards, once full of life, reduced to ashes. History may call it exile, but for those who lived it, it was devastation. It was children weeping in fear, mothers mourning their loss, fathers stripped of dignity, and all of it was done in the name of faith. The world remembers empires and victories, but it forgets the victims. Their cries do not echo in the chronicles of conquest. Yet if we listen closely, we can still hear them, the flames, the footsteps, the silence after the storm. The Banu Nadir remind us of a truth we cannot bury. When belief is turned into a weapon, humanity itself becomes the casualty.